Hello, welcome. Today we're going to talk about the playback mode on the FoosFit devices. Um, this video may be a little bit long, so I may break it up into two videos if necessary. The first part of the video, we're just going to talk about kind of how to set it up, some of the nuances of it, and things you need to know for the playback to work correctly. We'll talk about calibration and PID a little bit. Now, I will make a separate video on calibration and PID just for anybody that just wants to understand that. But I think you need to understand that a little bit for the playback mode to work correctly. And then in part two, we'll talk more about how to create your defenses and store your personal custom defenses as well. So let's get started. Don't want to waste any time. I assume you're already connected and you're logged in and you're paired. Go ahead and pair your guys together because we're going to be working with both the goalie and the two rod today. Now, you can go into either device. It doesn't matter because they're paired, right? If you remember that. But we're just going to go into the goalie here. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to select playback. Now, it was already in playback. I just do that because this is something that maybe should have been said at the very beginning on some of the other videos as well, is that you have to remember that just because the app thinks that the device is in a mode, say manual mode, practice mode, whatever, that doesn't necessarily mean that the devices are also in that mode. Because yes, it is true if you turn the devices on and you do everything in order as normal, whatever you're doing on the app is being sent to the devices. However, there are some cases where people may turn the device off and turn it back on and reconnect. So you've got one device that's currently in manual mode and one's in playback mode, possibly. It tries to align it. The web app tries to be smart enough to figure out that to sync them up at least. But I always tell people, I'll recommend that, look, if you know you've turned a device off or you're not sure, just go to the mode and hit it again. Boom. And that's going to send a message to the device, say, hey, both of you need to be in playback mode, right? Just, you're going to, if you don't do it and you get some weird effect, and then you're going to be wondering why something's not working. So it's just a good practice to hit the mode. Okay. Now we're going to go, there's two windows here that we're going to talk about. I'll pop this up briefly. This is the options window. This is where you would pull up possibly a custom defense that you created. And you could, in theory, pull up system defenses as well. However, and you can also filter defenses out. So if you've created a bunch and you want to only see the ones that, you know, for instance, stick pass, brush pass, whatever you created, however you defined them. However, for most people, honestly, you're probably not going to come here at first very much because we've already created some defenses through the training section. And the training section, if you hit the load button, is automatically going to set your mode and load your defenses for you. So it just kind of saves you a step and a little bit of confusion. And it also loads defenses that are very, very specific to whatever you're working on. So for example, and I'm going to go ahead and do this just to kind of speed up the process. I'm already in the rollover section and I'm on pattern recognition here. And I'm going to click on the standard defense pattern recognition. So I'm going to hit load. It says playback mode activated, playback defense loaded, 191, right? It's just kind of telling me what was loaded. Now I'll close this. Now, if I come into this window, you're going to see that? The defense is loaded. These are the defenses that were loaded from that lesson just now. That's 7 defenses you can run. Now, before you can run any defense at all, the very first time that you connect your devices for that day and you start the app up, it's always going to make you run a playback test. The playback test is because the playback mode is working on formulas like calculus, and it's using velocity and acceleration. And it will not align the rods properly if you are not calibrated properly, or PID. Basically, I call it PID calibration because it's a little bit different than regular calibration. So let's just do it. I'm going to show you real quick. If I hit it, watch the rod on the table. You see what happened? But both rods went to the dead center of the table. Here's the dead center, and this one is dead center for itself, right? Now, what I've done is I've marked the table with a baby pencil mark right here on the center of this guy, and then I did the same thing with the goalie rod. So I can quickly look at that line and see if the man is dead center. Because if he's not, what's going to happen is all the defenses you run are going to be slightly off. Like if you think you're blocking the long hole with the goalie rod, let's say, you may be blocking past it, or maybe you're leaving it open like that, and you don't want to be, right? Now, how do you fix that? Well, it's done through the PID settings. So the PID settings are rod specific. Don't forget that. So if you're in the goalie rod and you click on the PID number right there, you see this KP right here, that's what you're going to set. Now, you see it says 1.34. Well, if I go to the 2 rod here and I click on PID, right, it says 1.44 because they're different for different rods. So just remember to make sure you're setting it for the rod that you're trying to set it for. I've done that before where I'm in the wrong rod and I'm wondering what's going on. So I'm going to leave it in the 2 rod right now, so that way you can see what's going on. Now, it's very simple. The number, if you go up like this, you're basically telling the formulas that I want the rod to slightly position itself further from the device. If you go down, you're saying, I'd like you to position the rod slightly in towards the device. So down is in, up is out. And you'll notice it when you do it. But what does that mean? Well, if I go to 1.38 and I hit the run playback test again, now I usually kick the rod a little bit because it works on math. If the rod is very, very close to where it thinks it should be already, it may not even move. And it all has to do with the way the power is applied to the motors. So I usually tell people just kick it a little bit away from the line and hit the test again. Now I have it at 1.38, which is wrong because I know I don't need to do that, but let's see what happens. Okay. So if I look at the line right now, the rod should be right there. That's perfectly middle, but it's right here. And that's because I set this to 1.38. So I'm going to go back to 1.44 where it was at, give it a little kick, and you can kick it either way you want. And let's see what happens. Okay. It's dead center on the line. So I know I'm good to go. So that's all you have to do. Now, if the goalie was off, I would do the same thing. I'd come to the goalie, look at my PID setting, and go up or down and get that thing perfect. Now, I want to mention one other thing real quick, that this applies to manual mode, practice mode, playback mode. Now, this PID setting has nothing to do with what I'm about to tell you. This is strictly calibration. If I hit this calibration button, I want you to watch. The rod is going to move outward and it's going to hit the wall, and then it's going to go in and out. The reason it goes out first is it's applying kind of like a starting point. It needs to know where's the furthest point of the rod, and that's why it does that. But the key you need to understand is I'm going to hit it. So it hit the end, right? Went there and back and stopped. So why do we need to do that? Well, the software, the motors have sensors in them, and the sensors know where the motor's at all times. Well, when you're slinging these rods around really fast with a lot of momentum back and forth, what happens is kind of at a microscopic level, very slowly, they will lose their position just a little bit at a time over time. So it may take, if you're slinging them really hard and fast, obviously it's going to be a shorter time that they lose their position. When I say lose it, it means if it's bobbing back and forth just like that, that perfect space, all of a sudden you notice it's here and here and there and there and right, and it's past the hole a little bit, right? And you're going, hey, that's not what I programmed. That's because the motors over time slowly lose their calibration. Now, if you're moving the rods relatively slow, they're hardly ever going to lose it. Okay. So how do you fix that? If you notice it's off just a hair after practicing for 10, 20 minutes, just hit the calibrate button. That's it. And then go on with your lessons or training, and everything will be aligned. Now that has nothing to do with the PID. Okay. The PID, once it's set, it should be set correctly. In fact, you really, really rarely will ever have to set the PID, but you have to know it just to make sure. Now, so we loaded the defense through the training, and you see it loaded them right here. To run a playback, very simple. Now, I'm going to click on it and you see it load, right? Whenever something is showing in the window does not mean the device has it yet, okay? It loads it to the app window, but when you want to actually run it on the device, you have to hit one of the radio buttons. And that's saying, hey, let's load this defense, right? So it loaded defense 1, rollover, beginner, goalie defense pattern recognition, right? To play a defense, you simply hit the play button and it's going to play. Now, we'll talk about this delay in a second, but I'm going to play it real quick and you're going to hear it say set. It's going to play the defense and then it's going to stop and it's going to say set again and it's going to play the defense. It's going to keep rotating. Let's hit it. Okay, you heard it say set and then it goes again, right? So I'm going to hit stop. So the practice mode and the playback mode are very similar when it comes to the state machine that it's running. Playback, it simply goes through a state machine where it says set and it aligns the rod to the first position of the defense. Then it runs through the defense. When it's finished, it notifies the app, says, hey, I'm done. What do you want me to do? And the app says, well, let me look what the settings are. Oh, it wants you to play it again. Okay, set and do it again, right? And the way it does that is this little thing right here is the repeat, right? It's highlighted right now with a white box around it. If I was to click it and click off of it, you can see it's not highlighted anymore. So if you're playing a defense and you don't have either one of these highlighted, it's going to play it one time and then it's going to load the next one, number 2. And then it's going to play it one time, load the next one, number 3. If you hit this button, you're saying, yes, I want you to go to the next defense, but I don't want to know which one it's going to. Randomly pick between the 7 defenses. Okay. Why would you do that? Well, maybe you define 7 defenses or 10 that are exactly the same with one small little change, and you're trying to test your skill level, and you don't want to know which one's going to load, so you can kind of react to it when it happens, right? So that's, it just depends on the drill you're doing. That's just an example. But if you click on this right here, you're saying just keep repeating number 1 over and over and over. And maybe you want to just work on that one defense today or for an hour, and then you're going to go to the next one. Now, another thing is it's basically playing the whole defense. It's like an array, it runs through 1 through 500 or 1 through 100, whatever the defense length is. And when it gets to the end, it's done, right? Well, after that, it says, wait 1 second in this case, and then say set and do it again. You can set it up to 5-second wait, right? And it'll wait 5 seconds. And maybe you need time to set up. But the key here is if you set it to 0 and then hit start, it sends a message to the app, to the device actually, and says, hey, when you get to the end of the defense, the guy says, I don't want to wait or set or anything. I just want you to keep going. So it's going to keep looping through the defense, never stopping, right? So just remember, if you set it to start and then set it to 0, it's not going to work. It's going to keep doing whatever it was previous. So you always have to set it to 0 and then hit play. And then it's basically telling the app, don't wait, don't stop, don't say set again. Just keep playing this defense over and over until the device burns up. Well, I hope you don't burn it up, but if you practice that much, you're going to be really good. Okay. So you understand all that. Stop, play, all this stuff. Now, obviously, this is pretty explanatory. You hit that and look what happens. It went to the next defense. Pretty obvious, right? Well, this button right here is your download or upload, depending on how you view it. This is the one that's pulling any defense that's currently in the device. It's going to send it back to the manual input window. Now, what's in here now, these 127s are the center of the table, okay? And we're going to just cut these out so they're not in the way. So right now, I have number 2 defense loaded into the device, okay? Now, let me show you what that looks like, just so you can see. So take note of the defense, what it's doing. It's kind of shifting back and forth, right? That 2 rods moving a lot. Goalie rod's kind of staying still. See that? I want you to recognize kind of what's happening, right? Staying in a standard defense because that's what we signed up for. Okay, we're going to hit stop now. If I want to see that defense, I can hit download. And it's going to pull it from the device and it's going to drop it here. There you go. It dropped it into the manual input window here, right? Into the manual input. the goalie rod, and the 2 rod. This is the actual defense that is running on the table. So why would you want to do that? Well, there's a couple things. In theory, you could modify the defense yourself. If you want to play with the numbers, you could change things. Most people aren't going to do that. What it's really used for is 2 really cool things. One is if you hit the record button and you record a defense, you would hit the download, you would drop it into here, and then you could store it in the database. Because anything that you want to store in the database can be pulled from the manual input. You just go to the database, you sign up your defense, and you say, pull it from the manual. It's going to grab it and store it. Now you own it, right? So you could create a series of lessons for yourself, store them all in the database, and then retrieve them later to play on every day. That's one thing you could do with it. The second thing is this cool little button right here called invert. So my best example, which is really probably most obvious, is so somebody says, hey man, I created this awesome defense and I want you to see it and try to pass on it or shoot on it, whatever. So let's say on the 5-0, and he creates this defense and you go, well, that's awesome. But guess what? I pass on the far wall, He's like, oh, okay. We said, don't worry about it. Send it to me anyway. Well, he sends you the defense. You load it into the manual input window, and then you hit this button right here. If you watch the numbers here, when you hit it, it inverts everything. So if I take that defense now and I load it back into the device, I click the radio button, it will invert it from near wall to far wall. So everything that was happening here will now be inverted over here. Well, it does the same thing with the defense on the goalie rod and 2 rod. So as you can see, the defense we have was a standard with the 2 rod kind of jumping around right here, right? Well, we inverted it and we loaded it. So let's see what happens if we play it. It inverted it. Now it's going to play it in a reverse for position. You see that? And you can see the 2 rod, similar motion. You see that? 2 rods moving instead of the goalie. So that's a pretty cool feature because maybe you shoot great on a standard defense. And then when you see the same defense in reverse, you fall apart, right? A lot of people do that. It could be anything. It could be depth perception, ability to see the hole better or not better, right? Maybe you don't get around the post as good on the pull side, but you do on the push. There's a lot of things there. So what's really cool is everything you practice with the FoosFit, you should probably, even if the software doesn't currently have that defense loaded up as an invert, you should probably practice everything you do in invert as well as, the other way. So that way you get a good representation of all the different things you may see on a foosball table. Now, so we've talked about all the different buttons and how to load the defenses. So I'll just show you real quick how to record a defense. We're not going to store it and all that right now, but just so you can kind of see it. So I like to X these out. They get overwritten anyway, but just makes things clean. If you hit the record button, it's going to say set, and that means it's ready to record. As soon as it says set, it starts to record. So you can start moving them in, and then it will record up to 21 seconds. Okay. It used to be 35. There's a lot of reasons why I won't go into all the reasons, but it has to do with the quality of the record. Just like you take a video recorder, right? You have different levels of recording speeds. So right now at this speed, we found to be the best compromise between quality and memory. So you can record up to 21 seconds per little segment of defense. So if I hit the record and then I move the rod, now I'm only going to move one rod. I could move them both, but we're just going to leave that guy. All right. So we did that. Now I can hit stop here. If I don't hit stop, it's just going to stop automatically at the 21 second mark. But now I hit stop, right? And let's play it. See that? And now it's playing it again. Okay. Now, if I wanted to see that defense or I really liked it, thought it was an amazing defense. And if you notice, the goalie didn't move because I didn't move it, right? So it stayed there. We're going to download that defense. So there it is. As you can see, the goalie's all 23 because he's basically sitting at position 23 and he never moves. See that? And then the 2-rod is 55. Then he jumps to, you know, like 80 and blah, 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 129, all that, right? So that is a recording of whatever you want to do, right? And then you pull it down to the manual window. And then from there, you can store it in the database. So that is playback mode in a nutshell. It's a really cool feature. There's so many things you can do with it. It's amazing. Like just the level of different things you can run on the playback mode. I like to say that one of the best things is for pattern recognition, because you can set up all these different defenses and just get your mind used to seeing different things, right? Certain people struggle to shoot on reversed or a 3-man defense where like the man's here and I call it Chucky, when Chucky gets pulled in, and then certain things just affect people, right? So you can set up all those patterns and work on them. But you can do a lot of other things like stutter defenses and a timing exercise or anticipation defenses, a lot of things, because it's completely allowing custom stuff. There's just so much you can do. So we're trying to set up as much as we can in the training window here. But obviously that takes time. You know, we only have so much time in a day. So, you know, managing time between making help videos, playback defenses, just everything, coding more stuff. So it's kind of sharing time, but so we have some defenses here for you to play automatically, right? So when you get your devices, you can just kind of go right there and start doing some defenses. But now, so I'm not going to talk about anything else. The render, even though this technically right here works, this is for later on when we implement the defenses where we can actually record live matches, and we'll be able to put them in here and render them and cut the defenses up into all these little segments and store them in the database. So that's what the render is all about. And we won't go into that now because it's not really deployed yet. Okay, so there's your playback. Hope you have fun with it. Try it out and see what you come up with. You can store your own defenses in there and have fun, guys. Thank you.